Welcome back, everybody, into Bill's Chat. I am Josh McCarty. With me, as always, is Luca. Luca, we finally have a schedule to break down. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been on recording and stuff, but yeah, we now have the actual breakdown of what the 2025 season is going to look like from week to week. Schedule release is always a fun time. I mean, you're already seeing some people out there put out season predictions. I think that's a little early. It's mid-May here. You don't even know how the rosters are going to fully shake down. You don't know who could potentially, knock on wood, no one, but who could potentially get hurt for any team, whatever it is. That predictions might be a little early, but at least looking ahead at what games seem to be fun, how the schedule actually broke down and stuff, this is a great time of year because now it feels for the first time, Josh, in the 2025 season that things are real. We're going to have this lull now coming up, but we finally have at least the base canvas of what the season can look like, and that's very exciting.
You know, that whole experience leading up to schedule release, and it was on Wednesday. Is that what it was?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I am somebody, I can't get enough of it. And it reminds me almost of when the World Cup's going on. There's just such an outspoken group of people that just want to go out of their way to tell you that they don't like soccer. And it's like just because they see other people enjoying something that they aren't interested in, they feel like they have to go out of their way to tell you, I don't like soccer. Cool. There's like a loud majority of people that were on Twitter or whatever, just being like, why are people making such a big deal about the schedule? We knew the games. Well, because the alternative is like working on this report for work or this Excel spreadsheet. Excuse me if I'm going to take some time out of my day to figure out when the Bills play the Saints. It's fun. It's an adventure. Live with me. And, I mean, if you're somebody that does what we do, it's kind of nice to figure out, okay, what's going to be the weeks where I got to take off work the next day because the Bills are going to not even be done until midnight. And then we still got to record a podcast and things like that. And, I was very interested, Luca, to figure out, like, are they going to play on the holidays? Because now that the Bills are a spotlight team, Thanksgiving and Christmas are always an option. Always wondering if the Bills are going to be part of the international series. That's growing every single year. There's like 10 games this year that are out of the country, and those are neutral site games, and the Bills somehow avoided all of those. Maybe not by accident with it being the last year in the new stadium, but all in all, a good schedule. We're going to go through it tonight. What was your favorite part of the 2025 Bills schedule?
Favorite part? That's a tough one, honestly. Favorite part is really just how well spread out it feels. And I say that in the light of recent memory last season. It was so top heavy. The early schedule, we talked about it. We even, during our prediction show, I believe I had him 500. You might have even had him one game behind 500 just because you believed in the Jets a little bit too much at the time. But overall, it just was one of those schedules where, it was loaded up top. You just had week after week after week of tough games. And then all of a sudden it really alleviated itself. You had the Titans at home. You had this just weird lull in the middle of your schedule before then welcoming the Chiefs and then finishing off the season with kind of a loaded back end as well. It feels like this schedule this year is very well spread out. I think part of that is due to the fact that a lot of their tough games are all at home. And by a lot of their tough games, it is pretty much every one of their tough games. Those are home. So you don't want to stack too many home games back to back naturally. And overall, that allows them to be spread out a little bit. But that is, to me, what I enjoyed the most. I think the times and the days are slotted where they are, that it feels like the prime times are still a little bit on the early side. But to me, I think prime time doesn't necessarily define the big game itself. It's more of the opponent, of course. And even though, for instance, we are in Atlanta on Monday night, I wouldn't necessarily put Atlanta in that upper echelon yet right now. I think they got to work out some kinks here. They did trade up future first for another pass rusher after drafting one previously this past draft. So that should tell you where they're at as a franchise. That'll be a fun game. I'm not hating on that. Just I like that prime time's early. It is what it is, but the opponents themselves are very well spread out. And therefore, it feels like you might not feel as, or at least the team won't feel like they're going through a gauntlet at any point in time. They're just going through the nature of the season as a whole. And it will kind of be that 1 week after the next mentality really paying off as they work through the entirety of the season.
Yeah, there was a stretch last year where, I mean, going into the season where it was like Chiefs, Niners, the last two Super Bowl champions, and then at Lions, at Rams. It was just an intense run of games. And then, then the season actually happens and the Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season because that's what the Bills do. The Niners were not nearly as good as we thought they were going to be. By the time that the Bills got to Detroit, Detroit was a mash unit starting practice squad players on defense. They had no prayer of stopping the Bills. And the only reason the Bills lost to the Rams is because they had a block punt go for a touchdown against them. So, I mean, you look at it, you're thinking this is a gauntlet, and then you remember that the Bills are a damn good team and they don't really have to fear anybody. So my favorite part of it, Luka, was the lack of the international game. I think those are cool. As a football fan, I enjoy waking up on Sunday morning and having something to watch early. It's kind of it's very similar to waking up and having Euro soccer on it. It's the timing works for me. But as a fan of a team, the negatives outweigh the positives. And we saw some of that when they went and played Jacksonville, and the league is experimenting with different things where it's like one team's there for 2 weeks, the other one's there for 2 days. I forget what team it is this year. The Vikings, they play back-to-back games in different international locations. So it's like they're there and then they travel, and it's another experiment. And if you're a Vikings fan, you're in a Super Bowl window and your team's being experimented with again. And the Bills had some of that happen in their Jacksonville game 2 years ago. So I didn't want any part of that. I'm glad the Bills avoided that. I know the week 7 bye was a little early for some, but to me, as long as you avoid like a week 5, week 4 bye, as long as it's in the middle of the season, plus the Bills have 2 Thursday night games, which I know sounds kind of like but that also builds you a mini bye. And it's very early, week 3. And then the other one is, I think, like week 12 or week 13 against the Texans, November 20th. So that kind of spreads out on the season too. So I really like this schedule, Luka. The Bills open up with a beauty at home against the Ravens, rematch the divisional round last year. Are you somebody that likes to see the Bills open up with a game that's like, oh man, we're going to win that game, let's start off 1-0? Or do you like opening up with a banger like this one?
So I like opening it up with a banger, and I'll put it for this reason though, because the loss will feel as minimal as possible. It's very easy to recover from a loss to the Ravens when it happened week 1, rather than what it feels like when you lose to them and it's early December time. And that's really where my head goes at that. It's an early test. It gets you right into the thick of it all. It's a fun, as a fan, I just love it purely because you want to see those marquee matchups every week. That is just the reality of it, and that is the marquee matchup of it. But it's from a fan standpoint, in the sense of win-loss. I love seeing it week 1 because you can easily recover from it. It will not feel like the end of the world. That could be a game. I heard, I think it was on one of the sports programs. I think I just scrolling through TikTok or whatever, right? You're just hearing clips. Heard someone that it's like, this could be a seeding deciding game in week 1. I feel like that kind of label to a game early in the season isn't valid, just because there's still so much that can happen after that. So you shouldn't ever, if it's the first 4 weeks of a season, none of those are seed deciding games. Could it impact it because of a week 1 result? When you get to all said and done at the end of the season, both teams are healthy, they've been neck and neck the entire way, sure. But there's a lot of football that can happen. That's just a game you got to get through. It'll be nice to kind of hit the ground running and get a very good test right out the gate. You're going to get the absolute best out of Lamar and all of them, of course, and it'll just be fun to watch. But it will be something that I enjoy, that it's easy to work around. Even if you were to, for whatever reason, lose that game, it doesn't feel like it's going to be the end of the world, or all of a sudden you're kind of behind the 8 ball when it comes to the goals of the season being, win the division, try to obtain that 1 seed, dominate the AFC, and get to the ultimate goal, that is the Super Bowl. It's a week 1 game. You're just going to try to put out your best effort, hit the ground running. And then even if you were to lose, look, it's week 1. You got 17 more games or 16 more games on the schedule. Just, you got to get ready for the Jets the next week and move on with your life. And I like that a lot. I will say I only like one or two of those in the early part because you want those games to actually matter as the season goes on. But I
Yeah.
love that they put the Ravens right out the gate because that's what it is. It's one of this outstanding games from last year's playoffs, and we're just going to see what it looks like in this new year with some changes and a little bit of a different personnel for each side, and that's just fun for both the teams and then the fans. That's just a fun game to get going, and I love that. I don't like kind of the cupcakes early on. For instance, just to wrap it up, it's having the Cardinals week 1 last season and all of a sudden they were down and stuff. It puts you in a weird mindset as a fan.
Yeah.
You're like, what the hell is going on? And it's understandable that maybe the Bills weren't giving it their 110% because on paper, you're playing the Cardinals at home. You feel like you could probably put together a B plus effort and get through that game, but it's the NFL. You can't do that. You have to give your best effort every week if you want to be the best team. And luckily they came away with that, with the win from that, but it was less than pretty. And ultimately, that's one that can maybe be more unsettling than, say, a close loss to a very good team being the Baltimore Ravens.
Well, you say it all the time. Week 1 is a liar.
Yeah.
And we see upsets all the time week 1. And that's where, to me, the Ravens game is super ideal. Because if you go out and you play terrible against the Ravens and you lose, by 20 points, ultimately all that you lost is a game against maybe the best opponent on your schedule, which is fine. If you had lost last year to the Cardinals, which the Bills were within an eyelash of doing, go rewatch the last Cardinals drive. And I want to say it was DeMar Hamlin got away very blatantly with a defensive penalty on the last play of the game that should have extended the Cardinals drive, and ultimately could have had the Cardinals win the game. You lose that game, and like, holy cow, you're spiraling already, and it's week 1. You're like, we just lost a home game to the Arizona Cardinals. We're supposed to be a Super Bowl contending team. We just dropped a home game to the Cardinals. You lose a game to the Ravens. I don't care if the game's played on the moon. You say, that's Lamar Jackson. It happens. So I like it. And it is funny too, because you say the thing about, the national media, they got to get their talking points out. A seed deciding game. Well, the Bills played the Ravens in the playoffs last year in Buffalo, yet the Ravens beat them in the regular season. The Bills played the Chiefs in Arrowhead, yet the Bills beat them in the regular season. The Bills have beaten the Chiefs 5 times in a row in the regular season, and once have they had a higher seed than the Chiefs. So what really decides the seeds is games that you lose that you shouldn't. The Ravens losing at home to the Raiders. The game that Luka attended a couple of years ago where the Bills lost at home to the Broncos.
Yeah.
The Bills losing in Jacksonville to rookie Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer. Those are the games that ultimately decide whether you're on the road in January or not. You know what's funny, Luka? I used to be somebody, and if you're old enough to have gone through the drought, the way your perspective is of the schedule has certainly changed. The Bills are certainly a Super Bowl caliber team right now, and the perception of the AFC East, all due respect to the Patriots, who I think are kind of a darling of a team on the rise right now, it feels like the Bills have a lot of wiggle room in this division. Like, even if they have a season that's less stellar than some of us are thinking, and they only win 10 or 11 games, it feels like they'll probably still win the division by at least a couple game cushion. I used to have this mindset of like every game feels like a playoff game. And now I don't have that. Like, if the Bills lose week 1 to the Ravens, I'll be mad in the moment. And, I'll be like, oh man, don't drop next week. Now you're on the road against the Jets. And if the Jets win week 1, they're going to be like, oh man, are the Jets for real with Justin Fields? We'll do the dance. But ultimately, no individual regular season game is really going to like sink the Bills battleship. We know at this point in time that this team is about as automatic as it gets as far as getting to the playoffs. As long as this guy right behind me, 17, is healthy, they're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to have their shot in January. How healthy as a team are they in January really ultimately is what will decide how far they can go, and can they avoid going to Arrowhead, which would be very nice. But it's just kind of this weird spot where like the schedule comes out, and my first thought, I haven't even had the thought of like, oh man, they might lose to the Ravens week 1. It's almost like I don't care. I want them to win, but it's like, it's week 1. If you lose a game week 1, you're fine. You already said it. I feel like I don't want to say I'm overlooking the regular season. NFL regular season is my favorite 4-month stretch on the sports calendar because so much of my life revolves around watching NFL regular season games. Bills games are appointment television for me. I love them. They are precious to me. I rearrange my life around them. But realistically, with where the Bills are at in their build with Josh Allen and where their roster's at and where the rest of their division is at, to me, the regular season is about surviving not having devastating injuries, and been playing your best ball when you get to January, and then not having stupid stuff go against you in the playoffs. So I'm not going to freak out about one or two bad losses in the regular season. Are you there with me too, or are you still more so of the mindset of like every game kind of feels like an own version of do or die?
No, the perfect example is in the division for 2 decades, the New England Patriots. They're the epitome of coming out the gate slow, evaluating everything, getting into their stride through October and November, and by the time December comes around, that's when you don't lose a game. That is when you really are in full gear, full motion. You're dominating opponents left and right. You never are even allowing them to keep it close at times. And it's just you roll through then the postseason. You make these deep runs. Half the time with them, of course, it ended up in a Super Bowl appearance. But it's the early season stretch, especially with how minimal anyone sees action in the preseason and what you do in workouts. Those first 2-3 games, you can't expect the offense to be at all cylinders go. You can't expect the defense, everyone to be on the same page. They're really those are starter preseason games. They're finally getting full reps and figuring out what the hell they need to be doing. That's where having that Baltimore game is really nice because it's just going to be a quick slap in the face of this is a real game, real opponent. It's obviously another contender. You got to figure it out fast. But then also after that, you're at the Jets. You get Miami on Thursday night. You have the Saints at home. Those are now the ones that you start to work out the kinks a little bit more, and you have that leeway that hopefully you don't let them go aside when it comes to a result. And overall, now you're in October. You have New England coming to town on Sunday Night Football, and that's the moment, week 5, where you're probably starting to click on all cylinders. Things are starting to make sense, and maybe you beat Miami on Thursday night by 10 points, and it wasn't the prettiest, but then you have New England 2 weeks later, and you put up 35 and you beat them by 18, whatever it is, and you just look like a dominant force as you start to roll into the meat of the season. That's the early stretch is one where it's I don't want to be as blunt as it's just about getting the results, but that's all my expectation is. My expectation is just don't let them all slip away. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you lose one or two, so be it. If you have a Tom Brady at Kansas City moment in what was it, 2016 or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was, if you have that moment, it's going to be a very ugly next morning, but you can get through it. That team did turn around and I believe they won a Super Bowl, or at least they made it that year. So it's when those moments happen in September, and even those bad losses potentially happen, those are not end all be all. It's when those kinds of losses occur in early December, mid December, late November. If you're starting to see that trend, then when it's like, hey, this is when you should have everything figured out. It should almost be secondhand nature. Like you saw with the Bills, the offense was an absolute unit at that point in time against the Rams, against the Lions. Everything they were doing, it was just working so damn well that they didn't even feel the need that their top pick, Keon Coleman, first pick in the second round, was even needed after he came back from injury because Mac Hollins was just working too damn good in his big slot role and stuff like that. It's just one of those things. That's when you need to be rolling on all cylinders. Early part of the season, you're just figuring stuff out. Get through it. Don't let the losses stack then as best as you can. But overall, once it gets to October, November time, that's probably more so when I would be upset if they're not putting together good performances and getting the results that they really should be getting all the time.
The Bills have a week 7 bye, and the Ravens game aside, the weeks 2 through 6, man, it feels like the Bills have a chance to really do some damage, not just in the win column, but by putting the teams in their division behind them. Luka mentioned it. They go to the Jets week 2. That's a game the Bills have to find a way to win. I know the Jets have played them historically tough, but Justin Fields, new coaching staff, like you're the Buffalo Bills, you're trying to win a Super Bowl. That is not a game you can let go. Miami Dolphins on Thursday Night Football week 3. Thursday Night Football is always kind of a roll of the dice, but these two teams know each other so well. It's not like they need to go and have a full week's worth of game planning. It's week 3, so how worn down are you? I like the Bills' chances there. And then week 4, like they needed another advantage against the Saints. They're home and they have long rest after Thursday Night Football. Like that to me feels like the kind of game where we'll be watching it and it'll be the fourth quarter and Mitch Trubisky will be in the game handing off to Ray Davis. And then week 5, you have the Bills playing the Patriots, their third division game in the first 5 weeks. This one's at home on Sunday night. And that feels like a real chance to go 3-0 in the division. And, depending on what happens in the Ravens game, undefeated in the conference so far, or one loss in the conference. And, you wrap it up with a Monday night tilt against the Falcons before you have your bye week. And the Bills could be cooking with gas, but you never know what angles the season's going to throw at you, what injuries you're going to have, what teams that you don't expect to be good come out of nowhere and they're good. The Bills in 2020, people thought they were going to be good, but they didn't realize they're going to be Super Bowl contenders. Conversely, you don't know what teams on your schedule, like we're looking at it right now, and we're looking at this and we're like, oh, well, I mean, they play the Texans late in the year. The Texans could be really tough. You never know. The Texans could wind up being really bad. I wouldn't predict that. The Chiefs, the Chiefs to me, I'm not at all saying the Chiefs are going to fall off and be a bad team, but there's a reason why the analytics have not liked the Chiefs the last couple of years. They've been flirting with a lot of close games, tight games. They have a legendary Mount Rushmore quarterback, a legendary Mount Rushmore head coach, and a legendary Mount Rushmore tight end. And that gets you really far. But as far as like the Chiefs go, it wouldn't surprise me if they fell back, took a step back a little bit. I still think they're going to win their division. But ultimately, Luka, I do think there's a tough stretch coming out of the bye, though. And it does start with that Chiefs team. You go Chiefs at home on November 2nd, to Miami, which is never easy, home against the Buccaneers, who you and I both like, Thursday Night Football against the Texans, at the Steelers, and then home against the Bengals before wrapping it up with a game at New England. Now, look, the Bills could easily win all of those games, but that's not last year's stretch of Lions, Niners, Chiefs. No, that's not it. But if I'm looking for a stretch where it's like if the Bills aren't playing their best ball, they could drop 2 or 3 games. That's the one I'm pinpointing. And to your point, Luka, that's the time of the calendar where if the team's not playing their best ball there, that's where you actually do start to get concerned. Like, why are we not hitting on all cylinders now? We should be all kinds of ramped up and be starting to hit our best peak heading into where playoff football is going to be right around the corner.
Yeah, in that stretch, you mentioned the Bengals wrapping it up. The Bengals were a team I would have loved to welcome early on because they are the prototypical, they do not hit the ground running. Their first 2-3 weeks are historically terrible. But then all of a sudden they have, I believe last season they didn't do it, but I want to say the 2 seasons prior, I'm pretty sure they had at least a 9-game win streak in each of those seasons following that. It was something like that where the Bengals come out real slow. They're trying to figure it out. Of course, you get all the media pundits and everyone going, is the Bengals downfall now happening? What's going on in Cincinnati? And then it's like, oh, wait, by the way, it's Joe Burrow, it's Jamar Chase, it's T. Higgins. They got this. They just start rattling off wins and everything's fine. There's a lot of question marks with their defense now. That's why you saw what happened last season throughout the entirety of the season happen. But you need to be hitting when the games are getting to the meat of the schedule and you're getting into the cold weather and you're getting closer and closer to those playoffs. You need to be hitting the playoffs at full stride. You have to be getting to that end of season time where it feels like you're not even like calling plays to figure stuff out or whatever. You're doing things in a routine. Things are second nature to you and how you're operating them. That's where you should be at that moment in time. That it just comes down, it truly comes down to in those big games. It's just a critical set of downs where you actually have to evaluate, step back, and figure out what you need to do in those 5 to 10 moments rather than actually how to manage the game, what you're supposed to be doing in the game, because you should have been already doing that for 2 months prior to that. You figured that part out. Now it's like, actually, how do we emphasize and get the most out of those 5-10 critical moments in every game that ultimately see you go out with a win. And that's what you want to be seeing. As you mentioned, once you're hosting the Kansas City Chiefs, you're hosting the Bucks, you're hosting the Bengals. I love that we're hosting all those teams. Thank God we're not on the road for any of those.
What a beautiful home schedule.
Yeah. And for being the last season at the existing stadium, you couldn't ask for a better opposition when it comes to the entirety of the schedule. The only outlier in the schedule at home is New Orleans. And that's just because of the unfortunate situation that they've been just staring at in the face for years and years and years now. It's like now they're actually finally having to take their medicine and deal with the consequences of pushing all that money back. And, but even then, you get that game early in the season. That's a nice spot to have that. And oh, by the way, looking down the barrel, you have the Eagles week 17. You have the Bengals, like you said, a few weeks prior to that. You have the Bucks, the Chiefs. You of course have all your divisional opponents, and you open up the season as we talked about against the Ravens. I mean, that is just an amazing. If you're a season ticket holder and you're an individual, I'm not one of these. I like to maybe go to one a season and such, but if you like to go to all of them, you are going to get your money's worth when it comes to watching quality football at the Bills Stadium this year. It is a wonderful schedule. And yeah, that middle chunk is definitely where I would say is the toughest stretch of this. But what I even love about this schedule, and when I mentioned early on in the episode, Josh, you asked me what my favorite thing was, is how spread out it is. You mentioned the bye is week 7. You come out of that, you go to Charlotte, you play Carolina to kind of ramp yourself back up into game form to before you play the Chiefs. You're at Miami, which is a tough game, but you get Miami and Tampa, which kind of have some flair to them before you go to Houston on a short week, which then you get the mini bye to go into Pittsburgh, which is a tough place to play and everything of such. But at the same time, you really don't know what you're getting with Pittsburgh. And you have those kind of ramp up games before you have the Bengals. Like, that's so nice. Like, it feels like it's just spaced so perfectly for you to kind of navigate through all of these games and not necessarily feel like you have to be going full throttle week in and week out. I'm not saying that they don't need to be putting 100% effort when I say that, but there's a difference between week in and week out going at 110% and maybe having a game or two spread out so nicely where you can put a 95 to 100% effort into that, give it your all, but ultimately you're not overexerting yourself so you can navigate and hopefully not end up injured at some point in time, which feels inevitable in the NFL. And you can actually make it through the grueling thing that is the entirety of an NFL schedule. And from there, we know it best. You need to be healthy once the playoffs come around. This team has to be healthy. We've seen what happens when they're not come playoffs. This feels like a schedule that sets up well for them to even navigate, knocks and bruises and pulled strains, whatever it is. They can manage all of that through all of this as long as it times up okay. Luck needs to be on your side. I just love how spread out it is, where even as we talk about Kansas City, at Miami, Tampa, at Houston, at Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, you have some in there where it's like you get some wiggle room that you might be able to navigate certain position groups or certain individuals a little bit more and manage their minutes, manage their reps, and allow them to recover appropriately week in, week out. That it's fantastic. It's well constructed for this team.
I think a lot about Joey Bosa when I look at the schedule, because I think one of the biggest keys to this season is managing him. We were having an off-air conversation, just, talking about awards and, what Bills players, or really players in general, could be sneaky, throw down $5, maybe win 500 if you want to bet a long shot on like offensive and defensive player of the year. And Luka brought up the point of like, boy, if the Bills defense really improves and Joey Bosa can stay healthy and put up like 14, 15 sacks, he's got the name value. That's a guy that, it's not like he's predicting he's going to win defensive player of the year, but we're talking about betting $5 to win 500. That's a long shot you would bet on. I do wonder though, like, even if Joey Bosa just has like an illness and the Saints are coming to town, they're like, you know what, Joey, we can handle it. AJ Epinesa will be just fine. Landon Jackson will be just fine. Late in the year in Cleveland, if it's Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel or, Kenny Pickett starting, unless Joey Bosa has like 14 sacks and he's just wanting to continue to like add to the number. That's another one where it's like, you know what? We'll be just fine without you. Go ahead and take this one off. I want to talk about week 1 because you know how this goes. Week 1 always feels like such a big deal because it's the only thing we have to go by, especially like the teams that win week 1. It's like, oh man, our team's way better than we thought. Teams that lose week 1, it's like, we're never going to win again. I do think while I will have a level head regardless of what happens in the game, there is going to be some curiosity on my part, Luka, about how does the defense look against the best offense in the sport last year. an offense that averaged over 7 yards per play against the Bills in the playoffs, and an offense that really, unfortunately for them, fortunately for us, had a lot of self-inflicted wounds in that game that allowed the Bills to pull away and win that game. Pull away, win by 2 points. Um, if the Ravens come out after an offseason that saw the Bills add Joey Bosa, add Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi, who will not be there because they're serving 6-game suspensions, but bring back Tre'Davious White, Dane Jackson, invest so heavily in defense, including all 3 of their first 3 picks and their 4th pick. If the Bills come out and the results look very similar to the playoff game where they just don't have answers, is it going to be something where, I mean, we know what it'll sound like on Twitter and on the call-in shows, but you and I tend to have leveler heads about things like this. Are we going to be sitting here, you think, in the seats like, wow, glad you just invested all those resources in the defense to have it look exactly the same as it's ever looked? Or am I going to be mad on the post-game show and you're going to be like, it's week 1, Josh. Landon Jackson's first game in the NFL. Things like that, or TJ Sanders' first game in the NFL, Max Harrison's first game in the NFL. Maybe Dane Jackson is starting at that point. Where do you think it's going to sound like if that's what the game looks like?
I think what their personnel selection will really dictate that. And what I mean by that is you bring up like Landon Jackson. If they're using Landon Jackson a substantial amount, and yet Landon Jackson is learning who Patrick Ricard is for the first time in his life,
yeah,
that you take it for what it is. Like Landon Jackson's a rookie, and all of a sudden he's getting the biggest, fastest moving fullback in combination that he's ever seen, just ramming him, just play after play, creating that seal for Derrick Henry. And we're just seeing the same old song and dance. If that's happening, honestly, what I would come away with that is they're trying to figure something else out. You're just also depending on rookies right now, and it's week 1. Like, they're not going to figure it all out right out the gate. If they do, phenomenal. But if all of a sudden we're sitting there week 1 and they're not relying on the rookies, they're not looking at them to maybe change the dynamic of this defense, and we're just seeing the same old song and dance, that's where then I think I'll still be level-headed, but I'll just be slightly upset with the fact that McDermott still has this tendency of not trusting rookies in big positional moments and things. And I just think there's got to be a point in time, especially for what it's worth, after the draft, and really when I started looking at it, listening to Brandon Beane talk about it, stuff like that, there might be a shift in that kind of thought process. And they really feel like what they've done through the draft is addressing all of the things on the defensive line that they needed to. And they do have an expectation that these guys will be significant, impactful players. And it's eye-opening to me. It perks my ears up a little bit, because that, even though they did draft Gregory Rousseau, for instance, like when they did in the 30th overall pick of his draft, and then they just went right back at it with Boogie Basham. We didn't see much out of Boogie Basham. It turns out it's probably just because he wasn't that good of a player. But overall, it never really felt like they were giving him too much of a chance. He was just kind of on the back end of the rotation, and he was seeing maybe 10 snaps a game at times. If we're sitting here week 1 with 2 guys who signed in free agency, suspended, and Landon Jackson's getting significant snaps, and, we're seeing Maxwell Hairston out at corner playing significant snaps like we did when it came to Kyrie Elam and Christian Benford, stuff like that. It's like, okay, they are actually trying to figure this out. They believe that they're going to do what they believe is the best for winning games. They always do that, and that makes sense. But they're at least trying to figure out how to correct the things that we saw on defense last year. And they're giving these new guys a chance to figure it out when they need to be figuring it out. So I would come away very level-headed in that. If they're not doing that, that's where that little bit of doubt would be there. But overall, the massive overlay of it's week 1, it would be sitting there. I don't think there's anything that could come from that week 1 game against Baltimore where I would be sitting there freaking out that it's a travesty and it's a joke. We will absolutely, say the Ravens win in Buffalo by 20 points, Josh, Twitter's going to be a disaster. Like, everyone's going to be freaking out. The season's already over, all that stuff. And I will be sitting there upset. We'll be recording our podcast. In the back of my head, I'll be bummed out that we just lost like that. But also at the same time, I'm going to be like, there are 16 more games in this season. There are 16 more games, and you still have to play the Jets twice, the Dolphins twice, the Saints, the Falcons. I mean, come on. What are the Aaron Rodgers led Steelers unofficially right now? Like the Browns, you just talked about Shador Sanders' line. It's like the wins are still all very much there. Losing to the Ravens means absolutely nothing, especially week one. It is what it is. It would be a bummer, but it's just, especially if they're leaning on rookies, there's nothing that could really deter me from being anything other than it's a week one game, Josh. Everything will be fine.
You mentioned the 20-point loss. I mean, they lost by 25 to the Ravens last year, and they were just fine. Now, I mean, they made some changes after that. They didn't have Shakir fully healthy in that game. They did trade for Amari Cooper. You can say what you want to about that, but you know, I think Landon Jackson could matter a lot week one. I think he could matter a lot. This to me is you mentioned it on our draft recap show. He's probably, I mean, he doesn't project to. We both would love for you to be wrong on this. He doesn't necessarily project as somebody who's going to like ever develop into like a 12 sack a year guy. He feels, for lack of a better term, like a much more athletic Shaq Lawson, where he's going to contain the edge fantastically. He's going to be, his motor is going to be going constantly. He's going to be a pain in the ass to block, but chances are he's not going to be somebody that defenses have to fear wrecking the game in the pass rush situation. You hope he develops that. That would be fantastic. But this feels like, I mean, we all remember the 2020 Bills Ravens playoff game where Shaq Lawson was like the unsung hero in that game. His dirty work of containing Lamar. One interesting thing about the schedule, the Bills go Lamar Jackson week one, Justin Fields week two. Now, I am not putting those quarterbacks in the same category. But I mean, Lamar Jackson is such a unicorn. I mean, Lamar Jackson gives you a view of what it's like to go against Josh Allen. That's the best way I can say it. And he's significantly faster than Josh Allen. Justin Fields is not that. He's nowhere near the thrower that Lamar Jackson is. But I will say, I do think there's an advantage for the Bills in back-to-back weeks working on option defense, working on read and react defense, working on, what we're going to do when he keeps it versus what we're going to do when he hands it off. Is it going to be a situation where the D lineman crashes, where the outside backer crashes? How are we going to handle this at mesh point? I think that's an advantageous thing for the defense, Luka, and it's not nothing to me. So I'm not saying like I'm glad. I'm never going to be worried about the Jets anyway, but I just think that worked out fairly well for the Bills. And then beyond that, I don't know. Do any of these division teams scare you? No, we knew what their rosters looked like before the schedule came out, but to me, I can't shake the feeling that the Patriots, to me, particularly because of what I think about Drake May, but even more so what I think about what Mike Vrabel is going to bring to that team, which is discipline, smarts, probably not a team that's going to beat themselves. I feel like we could be seeing a Patriots team that like maybe the Bills beat them twice, but both games are super uncomfortable. I could see the Patriots team being a team that ends up being like a 9 or 10 win team where, maybe it's December. We're looking at the standings like, why the fuck aren't you going away? Excuse my language. How about you? Are you thinking maybe the Dolphins surprise us? I don't know what anybody could see with the Jets at this point, but anybody in the AFC East particularly scare you?
No, the Patriots are a class above the Dolphins and Jets. I mentioned it to a buddy. Man, this was pre-draft. This might have been back in February. No, it was probably March time. I mentioned to a buddy at bowling, and I told him, I was like, the Patriots are going to be a wild card team contention. Like they're going to be in that mix. And he's like, you like them above the Dolphins? And I was like, dude, you have to look at it. I think the past few seasons have put in our heads, or at least a lot of individuals' heads, that the Dolphins, because they have Tyreek Hill and Tua, for whatever you think about them and things like that, that they're always going to be competitive and stuff. But it's like, man, when you really look at that roster outside of a couple flashy guys and stuff, there are critical issues going on at all levels that I don't know how they're going to put together full game plans week in, week out. Like they're a disaster waiting to happen. And the Jets are living in a post Aaron Rodgers world right now. They sold out for Aaron Rodgers. It is a complete disaster and an absolute failure. Now you bring in Justin Fields I don't know what the thought process truly is on that. Honestly, I don't know what they're trying to gain from that. It's head scratching. The Patriots, everything you said was pretty spot on. I respect Vrabel a lot as a coach. I respect everything he's doing. I love what he did in the draft. There's a clear message and thought process on roster construction and what their identity is going to be and everything like that. And I think the only downfall of the Patriots is they're still lacking on real dynamic weapons. I mean, they bring in Stephon Diggs and it's like, poof. Post ACL tear, Stephon Diggs. Pre ACL tear wasn't really anything newsworthy for the Texans, and now you're in a post ACL tear world. I question that. Mac Hollins, sucked to see him go, but I don't know how much he's moving the needle for you when it comes to dynamic playmaking. He made a lot of plays thanks to Josh Allen's abilities. And Drake May is a capable quarterback. Drake May is not Josh Allen. Not yet. He could maybe be a baby Josh Allen if everything keeps going. But ultimately, I just think they're going to end up falling short when it comes to, and they got a lot of people's draft crush, Kyle Williams, also in the building there. So let's take that for what it is. I think they're a sneaky good team. Just overall, I think they're going to be a pain in the ass. Absolutely, as you said. I think the home game early on in the season being on Sunday night, I love that game is on Sunday night, because that's just going to me be like, there's levels to this shit. It's going to be one of those kind of games. But then that's where that December 14th game on the flip, when you're at New England, just typical 1 o'clock on CBS slate there, that's one where I can see the Bills being down 10, early third quarter. And it's like, oh shit, we got to put on our big boy pants and we got to figure this shit out. Like these guys aren't going away. They have things figured out. They have a great structure and game plan. And Vrabel is, as you said, they're not screwing themselves up. They're not shooting themselves in the foot. They're not doing anything. They're not shitting down their pants. They're actually playing ball right now. We need to get our shit together here. After the week prior, you just had a big game against Cincinnati, and the week after you have a game at Cleveland that I'm sure you could probably go in with a C performance and still get out a dub. So it's one of those sneaky little spots there that it's a quality team later in the season as things are going that, yes, I think they can absolutely be a pain in the ass. I don't think there's anything to worry overall with the division, though. I think the schedule works out in such a way for the Bills to stack up wins that ultimately the division shouldn't be in too much of threat. I just think the Patriots are the one and only team that are even worth a flying shit in the AFC East. And even then, I think they're just going to be that one where I would personally just say they're going to be one where I don't want to see them in the playoffs, just because I don't want to see a divisional foe in the playoffs. If we're not the 1 seed and we're having to play in the wild card weekend, I'm not going to want to see New England coming to town, because you already played them twice. They know you know them. Anything can happen at that point, and it becomes a pain in the ass at that point in time.
Hey, but if we are the 1 seed and they're playing Kansas City first round, go Patriots.
Yeah.
Go Patriots.
Yeah, of course.
It's funny you mentioned that they lack dynamic weapons. It's almost like they should have not beaten the Bills' third stringers at the end of the season last year. They'd have this guy I don't know if you ever heard of him, Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
That would change some things. I like Mac Hollins for Drake May. I don't know that Mac Hollins is going to put up monstrous numbers, but it's an adult in the room. And, I think Stephon Diggs year 1 will be an adult in the room too. But Mac Hollins, man, glue guy, tough guy. I think he's exactly the kind of veteran you want around a young quarterback that's still figuring out like his way in a professional locker room. Drake May, I wish he wasn't a Patriot, because I would love to root for him. I believe in him a lot. I believe in what the Patriots are doing too. All right. Were you surprised that the Bills were the only team in the NFL favored in every single game in the look ahead lines?
No, and the only reason is because we talked about it. all the hard games, all the tough opponents, you
Mhm.
get them at home. So you're getting that little bit of a lean because of that. Baltimore right now, the early line is -1.5. I want to say the Kansas City game, they were -2.5. I want to say the other one that was -1.5 at home
Philly.
was Philly. Yes. But like -1.5, if you want to call that being favored, it's favored by the least it possibly can be.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, you're not playing any of those opponents on the road where that's flip the script. So I guess I wasn't too surprised. It is a little surprising that your Kansas Cities, your Phillies, Detroit is another one in there that could have easily been seen as favored in all 17 games. They're still a juggernaut, especially with Hutch coming back.
Well, the two
Yeah.
you mentioned, Kansas City and Philly, the reason they aren't is because one, they play each other, and two, they play the Bills. So I
Yeah.
mean, there it is.
Right. Yeah. So it is, that is a great point too. What a year that you're getting. I think I saw a graphic too, just for lulz, where it was like Fox's top 10 games by
Mhm.
themselves. Like they were, and it was like Philly and the Bills. And then it was also Cincy and the Bills.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that, yeah, there's so many juicy matchups that are involving the Bills right now. And yet the Bills are, as you've said earlier in this episode, they're just such a damn good team that there should be no surprise that they can win any week possible, no matter the opposition. I love how you said, I think you said it off air right before we started recording too, where it's like you really, you go in and you're looking at the schedule and you're looking at quarterbacks, what games you want to go to. You're no longer looking at, I want to go to early because I want to see wins or whatever it is. And it's like, for going to a game personally, I'm in the same mindset. It's like, I just want to see the matchups. I want to see Joe Burrow in person, because the win loss to me is secondary. Like, I trust that this team can win versus anyone. I genuinely believe it, and I think that shit shouldn't matter anymore. It's like, well, who do I want to see that makes it more fun? Do I want to see Jalen Hurts in the Philadelphia Eagles? That might not even happen week 17. Do I want to see the Bengals and Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins? Look, as someone that loves the, if when I'm playing Madden, you bet your ass I'm throwing it 60 times. If I'm playing NCAA, I'm throwing that ball 60 times. I love throwing the pill. Who
Mhm.
else would be better to watch in this league other than Josh Allen than Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins?
Right.
They like to spread the ball around. It's a lot of fun. There's a reason I was an Aaron Rodgers fan all those years in Green Bay, because it was just so much fun to watch. That's how you pick games these days, because the Bills are just so damn good. Yes, it doesn't surprise me they're favored in all 17 games, because at the same time, I expect them to have the chance to win every single game as soon as they step on the field. They're that damn good. And now I just want to watch games because who's the entertaining team on the other side that we get to enjoy playing this team that we also are fans of.
Well, one player that'll be in uniform for the Bills, we assume, is Elijah Moore. We have not had a chance to talk about him since the Bills signed him a few days after the draft. I will tell you this, Luca. If you swap the time and the money, and the Bills signed Elijah Moore when they signed Josh Palmer and gave him the Josh Palmer contract, I would have been like, "Wow, we got Elijah Moore," because that's how much I think of the player. Now, look, I have not like charted his career. There's probably a reason why the Jets let him go, but I look at the situation in Cleveland when his number was called. He performed when Amari Cooper was down. I know Jerry Jeudy really stepped up last year and became that number one receiver that a lot of people believed he could be, and he kind of got lost. Elijah Moore got lost in the shuffle after they traded away Amari Cooper, but now that the Bills wide receiver group includes Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Joshua Palmer, Elijah Moore, where is your mindset at? Is this a, okay, fine, let's go play the feud? I'll tell you mine. Mine is, I mean, it's good enough to win because the quarterback is Josh Allen. I don't see anybody in this wide receiver group that scares me. Although I will say, I'm gonna say one thing, and I don't want anybody to take this as me saying like he's better than he is. But I've been going back and watching some Bills games from last year just to kind of like remember some of the stuff that happened, some of the moments in the game, like the Rams blocked punt and all that stuff. Khalil Shakir had some absolute like, God, he's a dog play. And there were so many just massive catches. There was some plays down the stretch against the Rams, and Just some of his run after catch plays he made last year. And I know, I mean, we all saw it happen when you go back and really just watch it. And when you go back and rewatch these games and you're not worried about like, are the Bills going to win? You're actually just watching them. There's so much little that Khalil Shakir does that's just you like. And I'm not saying that he's going to be a 1,500-yard receiver for the Bills or anything like that. I don't think the Bills are built for that. But to me, he's unquestionably the best receiver on this team. I like Elijah Moore. I believe in what Keon Coleman can become to an extent. I don't think Curtis Samuel's dead. I think he's probably going to be, better than last year. I'll give him some leeway on the injury. I do think Dalton Kincaid has some room to grow. We'll give him some leeway on the injury. But to me, the best receiving weapon on this team is Khalil Shakir and Luka. I don't know how close it is. He's just an absolute dog. If he had a few more inches of height, or if he had like one more tenth in his 40 speed, he'd be as good as the best guys in the league. He's just not like as athletically gifted, but man, he doesn't make mistakes. And that's when you have an elite quarterback, that can be everything.
Yeah, Khalil Shakir really the comp I like that doesn't like to get out of my head when it comes to him is really like Tyler Lockett-esque.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring that up because it feels like he avoids a lot of, and not in a negative way, in all the positive ways possible. He avoids a lot of contact. He avoids the big hit very, very well, which Lockett also has done. That he's known for that. That's his kind of his thing. But then they're just also so slippery. They're able to get away and make more of a lot of things when it really doesn't feel like it's there. The catch that stands out in my mind, that just in my memory, I don't go back and watch games like you, Josh, but I just have a nice memory bank in here. The catch against the Rams, where
That's
he just
the
kind of
one.
spins through two guys and slips through, gets a big touchdown in that moment. He's that's not the only time he's ever done that, but that's the type of player he is. He's a very unconventional number one wide receiver. He's not he's not a top 10 number one receiver in this league by any stretch. There are a lot of very good damn receivers in this league. But he feels like a really one of the best possible options for this offense because he can do a lot of different things. He's positionless almost at times, and that's great. I think the position group as a whole, though, I was on our friend of the show, Joe DeRosa's show on Cover One, and we talked about this. The receiver group, there's a clear tier, right? Elijah Moore's signature, what that introduced was a clear tier cutoff. It's like, these are your 5 guys. I don't see anyone else making it. And it now it has that distinct line of yes. Whereas before Elijah Moore came in, you were like, wow, like, is Shavers really going to make this roster as the 5th? Is the 7th round rookie we just drafted really going to make this as the 5th? Like, that's where it was really starting to be hard to swallow. Now, at least Elijah Moore gives that clear cutoff where you're comfortable with it. It's not the greatest in the world, but it'll do. As you mentioned, we have 17. We have this quarterback that can elevate anyone's game. You can get the absolute most out of pretty much everyone. And Elijah Moore making the comment that straight up, he just hasn't played with good quarterbacks yet. And I love that mentality because that just tells me he's motivated and he wants to show who he is. He has that dynamic ability to him. I'm not sitting here and expecting him to be a 1K receiver, but it would be nice to see him make some impact plays at a position, being the 5th receiver on the depth right now. That'd be great. But overall, it's Khalil Shakir, a very substantial gap right now. Keon Coleman and Joshua Palmer are probably lumped together a little bit. They bring different things, so it's hard to compare them. But overall, it's just 2 bigger receivers that can do their jobs, how they do them. And then, you have your other guys right there at 4 and 5. My point that I keep kind of circling on, and if anyone really asks, because we were very public, we love the idea of Luther Burden, and we love the idea of bringing in a more blue chip like receiver. The idea of that was because there's a lot of people that feel like they live in this fantasy world that progression is inevitable. It's like progression's not inevitable. Keon Coleman could easily be exactly the same player he was last year. He does not get any better whatsoever. And that happens on a very regular occurrence. And right now, you're looking at the cupboards, and do not talk to me about Laviska Shenault or Tyrell Shavers or this 7th round. I do not care about these players when it comes to the future of the position group. If they work out, that is a bonus. That's a gift.
It's not a plan.
It's not a plan. And right now, the plan is very, very short-sighted, which is fine. I Bean has sold me on everything through all of his appearances and everything gone on. He sold me on why, the draft was what it was. So I'm not upset about it. But when you look at this position group and you're signing your Elijah Moore, you're bringing in a Joshua Palmer and stuff, it's like, okay, that's going to work for a year, maybe two. And Keon Coleman hopefully does progress. Dalton Kincaid, as you brought up, hopefully finally the switch flips a little bit and he finally takes that big jump that the people inside that building believe like he should, and injuries have just been holding him back. That's great, but you can't bank on that. You can't plan on that happening. Progression doesn't happen always. Like, you have people that regress. Like, you have guys that come into this league all the time and they're just not able to figure it out, and their regression comes. Like,
Yeah.
you actually got the best out of them in their first 2 years, and they get worse because it's just, the NFL is it's a different standard. It's a different life. It is your job. And that's the reality of it. So bringing in bodies, bringing in blue chip talent at that position feels like something that has to happen. And it didn't happen this year. It is what it is. Not trying to make this about that, but that's why my feelings on this position group, I do share it. It's like, it's very, it'll get the job done. Like, it will absolutely get the job done. I believe Joshua Palmer is going to have an exceptional 600-yard season. I think Khalil Shakir is going to be your only 1,000-yard receiver on this team. And I think Keon Coleman could be a 1,000-yard receiver, but I just don't see it. But Josh Allen's just so special enough that it truly, it matters, but it only matters so much on who the hell is catching the ball. As long as they're catching the damn ball that's being delivered to them perfectly, time in, time out, that's all that matters. I don't care who that body is. We'll let the problem of kind of the receivers in 2-3 years be that problem when it comes. And right now, the reality is we're living in this season. We have one goal in mind. And I think, Khalil Shakir is going to be your marquee guy. You got Keon Coleman, you got Joshua Palmer, you got Elijah Moore, you got you got these guys with Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox that are going to be your tight end kind of pass catchers, and you got your backfield guys, and they're all just going to work in this machine once more. That 17 gets them the ball when they need to get it, and then also he'll take over when he needs to. And the reality is that will work, and it's a damn special thing to watch. And I'm not going to sit here, though, and act like this wide receiver group is top half in the league, because it's not. It doesn't even come close. As great as Khalil Shakir is, as great as he is, and as fun as he is to watch, when he is your clear-cut number one, and there is a significant drop-off there, the reality is you're probably not anywhere close near the top, and you're really probably closer to the bottom than you are the middle. I'm not saying that's for sure where they are. I think there are some very god-awful wide receiver cores out there, but the Bills don't have anything to brag home about when it comes to wide receivers in the room. And the nice part for the Bills is you have Josh Allen. So it doesn't really matter anyway. So, I was happy to put a pretty bow on it. I was happy with the Elijah Moore signing simply because of the safety. It felt like, hey, okay, there are 5 NFL caliber wide receivers now on this roster. That makes me feel comfortable now.
And I think there's a chance Elijah Moore could win the return job, and that would. I don't think that one of my hot takes this summer is going to be that is as good as he was last year. I don't think Brandon Condriton's going to make this team. I think the Bills have too many young cornerbacks. Whether it's the 3 they drafted in the draft, a couple guys from last year, and Daquan Hardy or Corey Couch, and then a couple veterans they brought back in Dane Jackson or Trey White. One of those guys could be on the practice squad for sure, but there's going to be a heavy numbers game at corner, and that doesn't even factor in the 2 UB guys that are, still very valuable, Cam Lewis and Jamarcus Ingram. Those roster spots are precious. If they could find somebody like Shakir or Elijah Moore or Ty Johnson to return kicks, we saw it in the playoffs last year. Even when Codrington was healthy, the Bills experienced life without having to dress a returner, and they just went with Shakir the rest of the playoffs. So I do think that there's a world there for that. One last thing, Luka, before we get out of here, I put a tweet up this week from our Bills chat account that when you look at, a lot of people are looking at this draft class from this year as what's going to fix the Bills defense. But a lot of times it's really like the sophomore class that could come in and make their impact. And it's just interesting that I think the three biggest question marks on this roster right now are the three high picks from last year, the positions they play. Keon Coleman, wide receiver, Cole Bishop, safety, Dwayne Carter, defensive tackle. Dwayne Carter's still on the roster, folks. I know there's a lot of people that want to just write him off. You would think that after what we saw from Terrell Bernard and Dorian Williams, people wouldn't just be writing off third round defensive players that have a bad rookie year, but here we are again. And it's just like these guys were second and third round picks respectively. And if these guys hit, there's the three major questions on this roster all solved. If two of them hit, there's two of the problems on this roster solved. What a massive opportunity for the 2024 draft class. If Keon Coleman becomes a high-end number 2, or God forbid a number 1, this entire wide receiver group looks drastically different. If he goes from Keon Coleman to T. Higgins, holy cow. If Cole Bishop goes from fun athlete who looks maybe a little bit over his skis when he's out there in a full-time role to holy cow, he's flying around. Is he a more athletic Jordan Poyer? If Dwayne Carter looks like, okay, he's had some splash plays here and there, but man, you put him out there for more than like 10 snaps a game, he gets a little bit overwhelmed to, wait a minute, this guy might actually be one of our 2 or 3 best defensive tackles. There's your answers right there. There's a lot of talk about TJ Sanders and Deion Walker, excuse me. But I think when you look at the 2024 draft class, Luka, so many answers on what's going to happen with the 2024 Buffalo Bills are going to be exactly derived from, tell me what happens with the 2024 draft class. If they hit, this team can go as far as we want. If they all fizzle out, you're really up against it. We need at least a couple of these guys to live up to the expectations.
Yeah, it's a big season for the sophomore class. It's a very good thing that you bring up there. It's worth it. I mean, I just talked about how there's always this kind of thought that progression is inevitable and it will happen. It's not, as mentioned before, but we have seen, at least as you brought up as well, successes in that, where the what you saw in their rookie year was not promising has turned into actual just great reliable play for this team at whatever position it is. Coincidentally, both of those were linebackers of recent, but it feels like something you see across the board, where I'm not someone that thinks that Cole Bishop won't be capable of being a starting safety for this team come week 1. I actually have this thought that he is probably the one most likely to make the jump in my eyes. I think the track record itself just shows, with this coaching staff and kind of what has happened, that feels like the one that they probably are going to be able to put him in the best situation possible throughout this entirety of the offseason and get him in a place where he can succeed now in his first. I consider, when you are a second-year player in the NFL, that is your first full year. That is your first real year in the NFL, where the season ended, you left, and the only thing that was on your mind and you were in charge of was getting ready for the following season. You are a professional. That is your job, and it's all about that. Now, I'm not saying that literally it's wake, sleep, get ready for the next season. They, of course, had an off-season break. You should, but there was no school to worry about. There's no draft to get ready for. There's no going through that process. Rookie spotlight, rookie mini camp, all that, like all this other stuff that happens in your first year, your rookie season, that stuff's gone now. Like you're now living the NFL life. So this is your first real year. And I think that's also why you see some of these guys that we've seen in a very good culture base, being the McDermott, everything they've done with the coaching staff and front office. It's very, very good and structured, that then you see these guys finally figure it out and things are clicking and they've been around the environment enough. They understand things. It's slowing down for them enough that they're able to process and allow things to happen in front of them, that then they're able to succeed because of. And Cole Bishop's the guy I kind of circle as the most likely to succeed. That's again, I do want to point out that's not me saying I don't believe in Dwayne Carter or Keon Coleman. I do have a little bit of a thought that I mentioned it with Keon and the point about the wide receivers. I think Keon will progress somewhat. I think he's just a guy who's motivated enough. And when you're around Josh Allen and you just see everything that's going on, it's hard not to try to get better at your job and better at your craft. So I think he will take a step forward. I don't know how big or small that will be, though. Cole Bishop is just the guy that it feels like everything is there for him to succeed at such a high level that that's where the significant step will come. And that's where I get excited the most. Like if you pose that question of who would I expect to be that guy, Cole Bishop's the clear cut answer to me. I think Dwayne Carter, just the nature of the rotation that's going to hurt you. But then also, I don't know how much I believe in Dwayne Carter being a traditional one technique. Anyways,
Yeah, they drafted 3 defensive linemen. It's kind of like Carter.
Yeah,
they don't...
that doesn't promote confidence in
right.
me. But hey, it could be message received and he gets his act together. That'd be great. I'd love for it to work out. You always want these guys to succeed, so there is that. Keon Coleman, I already talked about. Cole Bishop just has a beautiful situation right now that I'm very, very intrigued to see what comes with Cole Bishop. I would love to see a Cole Bishop out there week 1 against the Ravens after a true off season and training camp and everything like that, ready to go. And I want to see a guy like him pop off, because what I loved in this is I love this. It kind of merged into something I had a conversation with someone else. There was a lot of talk about how safety is such a need, and it is. Like, it absolutely is. But I also think that's the spoil of your own success when you had 2 all-pro level safeties for so long at such a high consistent level that it wasn't even secondary thought. It was just non-existent. You knew they were going to do their job. They were there. They were trustworthy. Everything's great. And you finally experienced life after it. And boy, was that brutal to watch in comparison. You just watched an NFL average safety tandem after years and years and years of an exceptional tandem. And that's where you saw some acting like it was the number one critical issue in this defense. It's like, no, it sucks having average safeties. Yes. Like other teams have managed and gotten around it, though. It's okay. We just also had studs back there forever that somehow also would, even when hurt, they'd still play through it with their arm attached to their side or whatever it was. It's like, yeah, we were spoiled by the success that was Poyer and Hyde. This is the reality of what majority of teams experience. Not everyone has a Jalen Thompson and Budda Baker like they do in Arizona, or a Hyde and Poyer. It's like, no, most teams have to kind of navigate those safety positions and kind of hide them as best as they can. But it would be sure nice to have a Cole Bishop pick it up, get it back, have an athletic Jordan Poyer, as you mentioned, and kind of start to fill that void and get us back to elite safety play.
And if you watch the AFC Championship game back, I've said this time and time again, it just stood out like a sore thumb how slow the Bills secondary was. And if you insert Cole Bishop and Max Harrison, holy cow, are you on your way to making that a much more athletic group? And I hope both of those guys are starting come week 1. I'm with you. Cole Bishop, to me, has the best path of those 3. As far as who my confidence is in. Keon Coleman second, and Dwayne Carter quite a bit below that, just based on the fact that the Bills double dipped at defensive tackle. I still do believe in Keon Coleman. I don't know that I ever believed he could be a future number 1. He doesn't necessarily have to be, but I want to see him take a jump this season. I mean, I want to see all these guys take a jump. If Prather, who they took in the 7th round, turns out to be the next Stevie Johnson, I'll be elated. And even though there's no like audio of me saying, hey, he's going to be great, I don't care about that. I want the Bills to succeed. All right, Luka. Let's get out of here. It's been an hour and 10 minutes. We are on schedule with this schedule show. But we love talking about the Bills schedule, and this summer football kind of gets pushed to the background, but we'll be back. I don't know when we're going to be, we have an idea when we're going to be back, Luke. I know I have a vacation coming up, but
no, it's off season time, stuff like that. I don't think we love doing this and stuff like that, but we'll see as the news pours in what's there to discuss and stuff like that. As everyone else likes to enjoy their summer, we have to enjoy our summers too. I mean, I have some trips coming up as well and stuff like that. We'll of course be just talking stuff. Maybe we'll just go down memory lane a little bit from time to time, like the OG days where we just did a bunch of history stuff just because I don't know, we're Bills nuts for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But we will have to see. It'll be a TBD for now. TBD.
Yeah, we don't want to force an hour show on whether Dawson Knox should be like the number one blocking tight end on the team or if they should give Reggie Gilliam more snaps. Like that just, I don't know that necessarily moves.
It's going to be hard to give Gilliam snaps when he's down. Where did he sign? Jacksonville?
You're thinking of Quentin Morris.
Oh, Quentin Morris went to Jacksonville. Right. Yeah. God, good Lord. They all the same to me.
There was a tweet that was just so spot on. It's like tell me about Color Rush Quentin Morris, because every time the Bills were Color Rush, he was making asinine catches and then would literally do nothing in the other games.
Yeah.
And it's so true. I hope he does well in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
All right, Luka. For Luka, I am Josh McCarty. We will talk to you next time on Bills Chat.